a deformed body, unbearable pain, a stench so vile it made courtiers faint, and after death, bodily fluids leaking from the coffin, lapped up by stray dogs in the chapel. This was the undignified, almost unthinkable end of one of history's most feared monarchs. Today, we peel back the curtain on the grotesque final chapter of King Henry VIII of England.
History's full of powerful figures who reshaped the world with brute force, cunning politics, or sheer will. But very few went out the way William the Conqueror did. In fact, the way his life ended was the kind of stuff that feels ripped out of a dark medieval comedy. A king who spent decades building an empire, battling rivals, storming castles, and reshaping England forever, ended up exploding. Literally. Before the grisly finale, let's rewind a bit. William's story kicks off in 1028 in the town of Falaise in Normandy. He wasn't born with the golden crown waiting for him. Far from it. His father, Duke Robert of Normandy, had a fling with Herleva, the daughter of a tanner. That made William a nobleman's illegitimate son and earned him the nickname William the Bastard. Not the friendliest moniker for a child, and one that stuck through his early years like a scarlet letter. Still, despite the social stigma, his father didn't cast him aside. Robert actually named William as his heir before heading off on a pilgrimage. But when Robert died suddenly, William, just 8 years old, was thrown into the deadly whirlwind of Norman politics. Imagine a kid trying to survive in a world where assassination attempts were just part of a Tuesday. That's what young William had to endure. Assassins, betrayals, rebellions. He survived it all. And those early brushes with death carved him into someone far more dangerous. By the time he became an adult, William was ruthless, sharp, and ready for more. The moment that turned his name into legend came in 1066, after the death of Edward the Confessor. With no clear heir to the English throne, chaos erupted. Harold Godwinson took the crown, but William wasn't having it. He believed Edward had promised him the crown. And when William wanted something, he didn't whine about it. He got on a boat and came swinging. He crossed the English Channel with a massive army, and on October 14, 1066, at the Battle of Hastings, William's forces crushed Harold's army. It wasn't just a win. It was a decisive, brutal end to Anglo-Saxon rule. By Christmas Day, William was crowned King of England. The bastard had become a conqueror. But ruling England wasn't just about sitting on a throne. William transformed the country. He built fortresses, castles that still stand today like the Tower of London. He introduced the feudal system, flipping England's power structure upside down. Lands were ripped away from the Anglo-Saxon elite and handed to Norman barons. And like that, the very bones of English society were reshaped. The impact of his reign wasn't just political or military, it was cultural. Norman language, architecture, and customs merged with the Anglo-Saxon world. The very DNA of modern England still carries traces of William's touch, but even the most legendary rulers aren't immune to time. As William aged, the body that once survived battlefields and campaigns started giving out. By the time he hit his late 50s, he was no longer the lean conqueror charging into war. His once formidable frame had grown heavy. Enemies noticed, and some didn't hesitate to mock him. Behind closed doors, nobles whispered jokes that would have once cost them their heads. Portraits painted him broader than before, and not in the flattering, majestic way. His once brilliant military mind was now overshadowed by concerns about his stamina. Even his advisors began making contingency plans. The man who had once made kings tremble was now being measured by how many steps he could climb before gasping. He wore his armor. He attended council. He held court. But the glint in his eye, the one that had burned through rivals and traitors alike, was starting to dim. The man was still a king, but his body was turning against him. And for those watching from the shadows, it was a sign that maybe, just maybe, the age of the Conqueror was nearing its final chapter. Enter King Philip I of France. William and Philip weren't exactly best friends. They had a tense, uneasy relationship that was more rivalry than alliance. And Philip, always quick with an insult, poked fun at William's weight. He cracked jokes comparing the Norman king to a pregnant woman, and that insult landed deep. For someone like William, who fought his entire life for respect, this wasn't just a jab, it was a challenge. And challenges demanded answers. Even though he was older, slower, and not in the best shape, William wasn't about to let that insult slide. He pulled together his army for one last campaign. The target? The town of Mantes, a strategic stronghold located near Paris. If William could take it, it'd be a loud, clear message to Philip. Mock the conqueror and expect fire in return. In the spring of 1087, William's army marched out. It was a grueling campaign. The siege of Mantes was brutal. His forces attacked hard, surrounding the town and tightening the noose. But while the battle raged, fate had its own plans. William, still determined to fight like the man he once was, rode through the chaos on horseback. And then, it happened. His horse stumbled, just like that. One misstep was all it took. William was thrown hard, and the saddle's pommel struck him right in the abdomen. That one moment, so sudden, so seemingly small, became his undoing. The injury was brutal, not just a bruise or a cracked rib. Something inside ruptured, internal damage, likely massive bleeding. And worse, there was no modern medicine to patch things up. The man who had stormed across the English Channel and crushed kings was now bedridden. Taken to the priory of Saint-Gervais in Rouen, William began to fade. His condition worsened day by day. The pain, the weakness, the fever, it was all too much. Historians believe the wound may have led to sepsis, infection, unchecked and spreading. On the battlefield, he'd fought with steel, but now his own body was his enemy. And as the days ticked by, something changed in him. The fiery conqueror turned inward. Facing the end, he began to repent. Guilt crept in. Memories of bloodshed, the lives taken, castles razed, and thrones claimed. It all must have felt heavier than any crown. So he did what many did in the shadow of death. He turned to the church. He made gifts, donated land, gave offerings in hopes that charity could balance the scales. Maybe redemption was still within reach, but death didn't wait for comfort. As his strength faded, he started dividing his empire among his sons. Robert got Normandy. William Rufus took England. Henry received only money for now. The conqueror's empire, once united by his iron will, was now splintered, scattered between heirs who would one day fight each other for more. Then came the end. September 9th, 1087. William the Conqueror died, not on a battlefield, not with a sword in hand, but in a priory bed, surrounded by the few who stayed. But the story doesn't end there. What happened after his death turned the tale from tragedy into something grotesque. The moment William passed, panic set in. Servants, attendants, even nobles. Many bolted, not out of grief but fear. With the king dead, his valuables were now unguarded. The scene turned chaotic. People scrambled to grab what they could. And the king's body? Left alone. Without proper care, the heat of the summer took its toll. The once mighty conqueror began to bloat. The stench grew unbearable. His skin changed color. His body, swollen and decaying, was in no state for a royal burial. But the funeral had to go on. A coffin was prepared. But there was one massive problem. The coffin was too small. No one had accounted for the king's size or his now bloated corpse. But they had a ceremony to perform, so the attendants pushed on. Literally, they forced the body into the coffin. And that's when the unimaginable happened. With a sickening sound, William's abdomen burst. If this tale of power, pride, and a very messy ending made you look at history in a whole new way, consider hitting the like button. Subscribe for more real stories that don't just teach history, but bring it to life. And in the comments, share what shocked you the most about William's final chapter.